e-commerce space has millions of products. Only 1% of the assortment of the products that are on these e-commerce platforms are seen by potential customers. Social media became a natural space where these products can actually be discovered. Thus, the involvement we had in this space and why we decided to enter the influencer marketing space.
This is the eCommerce in Southeast Asia podcast with Matthew Shoney, session number 2. Let's get started.
Welcome to the eCommerce in SE Asia podcast, where it's all about understanding and winning e-commerce in Southeast Asia. And now your host, Matthew Shoney.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I am very excited to welcome this week's guest, Thibault Couperie Eiffel. Thibault is an influencer marketing expert as the co-founder and CEO of Capssion.com, an all-in-one influencer marketing platform and also a service provider for brands and agencies running influencer campaigns. He's run an estimated 1,000 plus influencer campaigns for 200 plus brands in the past 3 years. So it's safe to say he really knows his stuff. And prior to starting Capssion, Thibault worked on the marketplace side at Lazada Group for several years, and before that, as a venture capital analyst. So really excited for this podcast. Welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to speak with us, Thibault.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a bit more about yourself. Like, what's Capssion and what led you toward influencer marketing?
I think from what the intro, how you presented me, I think I've had many hats in my short career. I started off, in the VC world. I then went on to consulting, and then I worked for, as you said, for several years for Lazada in Southeast Asia. I think the latter, the e-commerce world in Southeast Asia, is definitely what led us, me and my partner, to create Capssion and be involved in the creative economy in Southeast Asia. I think the decisive moment for us was when we saw that there was a shift in consumer behavior operating online, not only in Southeast Asia, everywhere in the world, where products and brands were no longer discovered on marketplaces, but on social media. And when we saw this happening, we decided obviously to be involved in any fashion in that space. And yeah, this was a decisive moment. This is why we decided to create Capssion, because we knew that the future was there, and we knew that we had to facilitate the collaboration between brands and influencers, because there was a massive need. And it's not an easy realm. The content creator space is not an easy realm to enter. It can be a bit scary at first when you have never been in it. And this is why we exist, is to make it as easy as possible for both parties to work together. And the e-commerce space has millions of products. Only 1% of the assortment of the products that are on these e-commerce platforms are seen by potential customers. And so social media became a natural space where these products can actually be discovered. Thus, the involvement we had in this space and why we decided to enter the influencer marketing space.
Yeah, I think it was obviously a very wise decision in hindsight. I think 2022, after the Facebook iOS kind of performance debacle, it feels like influencer has never been hotter. And you also have this like really interesting uprising with TikTok and TikTok Shop. It's been in Asia for a while. It's just now, I think, really starting to move over into Europe, or at least TikTok Shop. It's how the younger generation consumes content, and it's how they search for products. It's I think there was this like evolution before where everyone searched for stuff in Google, and then they started searching for products in marketplaces. And it feels like in the future, that the search, depending on the generation that we're talking about, of course, is just happening more and more inside of these creator platforms.
I mean, I remember it's a great comment. I think I remember 4 years ago when we started Capssion. I think one of the things that was an eye-opener for me was whenever I heard about, somebody told me about a new fashion brand or beauty brand or service, my first reflex was to go on Instagram and no longer on Google and look on their website. I think websites were just, they got replaced by Instagram pages. That says a lot about, that reflex that you have as a customer, because I am also a customer, says a lot. And I think right now, what's happening, what you said about with TikTok, with younger generations, where they no longer type the search on Google, but on TikTok is also says a lot about where the industry is going, where online sales are happening. And I think we'll see a convergence between social media and e-commerce. We'll talk about it a bit later, but it's definitely, I think, going in that direction.
Yeah, it's both super exciting and also super tiring, to keep up with, because it's the game always change, and this is one of the things that I always tell younger staff and younger people that I'm working with is that you have to stay really humble in digital marketing and e-commerce, because in a period of 6 to 12 months things can completely go upside down, right? 12 months ago, if you just went off the grid and you were relying on your knowledge that you had built in your career before, you wouldn't be taking advantage of TikTok, and your competitors would be, and now, especially in the US and Europe, driving off marketplace traffic to Amazon is becoming such a big critical part of the game. And that Amazon is supporting that, giving incentives for brands to drive traffic offsite, not only using their advertising tools. So it's cool, but to an extent, it's always kind of been here in Southeast Asia, right? I think a lot of people look at Lazada and Shopee as kind of the beginning of e-commerce in Southeast Asia, but that's the beginning of what I would call formal e-commerce, right? Because there'd always been this informal, and it's still going, world of people selling stuff on Facebook and selling stuff on WhatsApp, cash on delivery, but just casual communications back and forth. And in some of the lesser developed markets of Southeast Asia that we spend less time talking about, like Cambodia or Myanmar, it's still pretty much all social driven, right? So what's influencer marketing in 2022 to you? What is if I'm a new brand or seller just dabbling in this for the very first time, how do I look at and try to understand influencer marketing?
That's a really good question. I think obviously influencer marketing has been hype for a while. I think it's been on everybody's lips for the last few years, with COVID happening even more so. Shifting your sales to online has been a massive priority for a lot of brands in the last few years. But I think what I'm really enjoying what's happening right now. I think in 2022, we're finally getting back to authentic content, authenticity. Brands are starting to ask themselves again the question that the influencers that they partner with, they should look like their customers. And this is something that we got a bit away from it over the last few years, because there was a constant race to do more than your competitor, big volumes, maximum amount of reach, highest engagement possible. All these metrics, we're always chasing KPIs as brands, drive more traffic, have, all these things. I think right now what I'm seeing is a lot of the brands are coming back to the fundamental where they ask themselves, the person that I'm working with, they need to look like my end consumer, because the likelihood that the people who follow this influencer will look like them is very high. I lose myself if I work with as many people as possible. Basically, I lose my brand identity the more I work with people who are not my customer, because also the reviews that will come, the posts that will come out of these collaborations will not feel authentic. And I think this is a super interesting shift, because I think the industry is maturing, it's professionalizing. We are no longer in a race to do as much as possible. I think we are now more towards quality collaborations more than quantity collaborations. I'm really, really glad to see this change.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wonder if there's some sort of tie-in or connection to macroeconomics, that was leading that. Is it now because there is some macroeconomic issues and profitability is really, really critical, or more critical than it was before, that now people are focused more on good performance, and then that's making them be more selective with their influencer strategies?
I think the budgets have not shifted. If not, they have increased, even with the current economic situation. But we are seeing higher payouts for less people, which I think also a lot of brands have been doing this for a few years. And what we always tell brands is nobody's an expert in this, in social media. Nobody can claim to know how to end the game. It is constantly changing. You need to iterate, you need to test, You need to work with different people as well, because you might not know that a certain type of campaign or certain type of content might work better for your brand. Once you have found a sweet spot, you can push on it. And so I think we are at a stage where a lot of brands have been doing this for a few years. They know what to look for in a content creator, and they can tell when an influencer is going to be successful to carry out their brand message, their brand identity, and work with them in the long run, which is also something that I want to address. I think we are shifting also from one-off collaborations to repeat collaborations, which is, again, something that really excites me because it's something we've been advocating for now years. We are in an industry, even though it's a numbers game, you are interacting with real people. They are businesses, these influencers, but they are real people behind them. And you need to, have conversations about who you are, why you want to work with them, and not simply send a brief and be done with it. And so brands can invest more time and money into the content creators that they believe are the right fit for them. And that's really exciting.
So just for maybe the more novice listeners out there, can you help take us through some of the hypothetical steps of a successful influencer campaign? I guess example would be step one, I need to put together my list and do my research. And then two, I need to go and talk with him. How do you frame this and how do you think about this?
So I'll use Capssion because on our platform, we do have a brief builder, and we've built this, what we call a smart brief builder. We've iterated it so many times to make it as close to what we consider a perfect brief. I think the number one thing you need when you are a brand is to understand, number one, and that's the most important thing, is why you're doing this campaign. What do you want out of it? Influencer marketing is so broad in 2022, from awareness campaigns where you just want to be seen by as many people as possible, to traffic campaigns where you want clicks, people to go to your e-commerce shop, Amazon, Shopee, Lazada, or simply on your D2C website, generating sales, asset generation for commercial or editorial use. There's so many angles that you can approach a campaign that if you are not clear about what you want, or if you want to multiply the objectives too much, you are set to fail. And so this is why we impose one objective so that the result, the KPIs that we monitor are straightforward. The second most important step that you need to identify is who will embody your brand and communicate your brand identity the best. When people apply to your campaign and you're not clear about who you're looking for, outside of metrics, I'm talking about what does this person look like? What is their lifestyle? What do they like to consume? How do they behave in society? These things are important because you can get lost a bit and you can lose your focus. So this is why it's important to know that well. And then obviously all of the other basics need to be there as well, but these are more technical things. The virality of your campaign, what hashtags and tags you're going to use, what country you want to operate your campaign in. Everything kind of happens from these first two things, and everything is a bit easier once you have decided that. So yeah, once you have decided obviously on the country and who you want to work with and your campaign objective, then the selection of the social media platform you want to run this campaign on should come a bit more naturally. Obviously, it's complicated today. There are so many of them, and they all look a bit alike. Instagram used to be for beautiful photos. YouTube was for long-form product reviews. It used to be that Twitch was for live stream, and that Twitter was for announcements or news. It is not the case anymore. I mean, YouTube has shorts, Instagram has lives and stories. TikTok now has just announced that they're going into photography. So it is hard to navigate, but go for what the platform is strong for, depending on what you have listed before, your objectives, your customer, and what you want out of this campaign. Understand the strengths and weaknesses of each platform and know why you're selecting the platform and the specific type of content, and the rest should flow.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, when I think influencer, I think, influential people first and foremost, and then a lot of different touch points, right? So I think the average influencer's probably visible on at least 3 touch points. How do brands kind of structure those partnerships? Are they posting on each of the the channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, maybe, or TikTok, or is this completely up to negotiation? How close embedded the influencer is to the brand and their outreach?
Super interesting. I think because platforms are looking more and more alike, we are seeing that, to take, for example, Capssion, 50% of the influencers that are on Instagram have a TikTok account right now in 2022. It was less than 10% a year ago. I think there is a shift in cross-platform content, also because the platforms allow it. Meaning, what I was saying earlier, YouTube having shorts is content that you can basically reuse from your Instagram stories. They are the same. Obviously, you could iterate because the people who are on YouTube don't want the same type of content exactly as the one on Instagram. But you can repurpose your content across so many platforms in 2022. The most obvious example being TikTok influencers who post the videos on Instagram Reels. So for sure, brands are trying to capitalize on having more complex campaigns with cross-platform deliverables. Still, in 2022, when you work with an influencer, they are usually strong on one main channel, where they started, where they got popular. And then in order to increase their rate card, to be able to bill more money to brands, they have expanded to other channels that are kind of like a nice to have. But I would tell brands, focus on that main channel, make sure you get it right, and then do cross-platform content. But it's not an option for everybody. If you're entering influencer marketing, I would advise you not to go too complex. It's already complex enough to get it right on one platform. Try to keep it simple at the beginning, and then you can have fun and go cross-platform. Even ask influencers to create different content for different platforms, which is ideal.
Got it. I would think a lot of this kind of depends on the commercial model and the incentives that are in place with the influencer, right? So I guess it could vary a little bit if they're paid based on performance rather than like a lump sum for X number of posts. What are the different kind of compensation models that you're seeing across micro and large influencers in 2022?
I think we are shifting away from gifting. It used to be extremely popular because it basically lowered the cost of each collaboration to basically shipping for brands. And this used to be a very popular practice back when we started Capssion in 2018. I mean, right now in the world, there's around 70 million content creators that at least want to make it their occupation. The goal is to make a living. And so gifting campaigns are obviously almost exclusively limited for influencers to brands that they already know, that they fancy, brands that they would purchase on their own. So I think we're seeing a shift where the average payout per influencer is increasing. There's a professionalization of the industry. And yes, I think there are less and less unpaid collaborations, brand mentions, if I might say, happening in 2022 than when we started in 2018. And I think the industry is going that direction. Then when it comes to e-commerce specifically, we're also seeing a shift where the one-off payment, so this was for the creator side, for the brand side, where there's a shift as well. There's been for the longest time flat fee payouts where you basically pay the influencer $100 or $200, obviously prices for Southeast Asia on average. It's more if you are in the US or in Europe, and then the collaboration is done. You pay a one-time fee, and then irrelevant of the result, that fee has been paid. We're seeing more and more, obviously, affiliate programs, commission on every sale that happens, but also on traffic. And so whatever, unique visitors that you bring to your e-commerce shop or on your SKU, on your D2C website, you get, a few dollars. I think this is a very interesting change as well, because these are tangible things. When you bring somebody to visit your website, then the influencer's job is done. They have converted the customer into an intent of purchase. And then obviously the role is for the brand on their website or on their SKU page to seduce the customer. And I think that's a very positive change. It's more transactional change. But I think what I really love about this change is that some influencers in 2022 have recognized that their audiences they can monetize on the audiences that they have built over a long period of time, and they want to reap the benefits as well of what they're saying. It is no longer about just me saying I'm behind this brand and then move on to the next collaboration. I think influencers, when they coming back to authenticity, when they are promoting a product or a service, a brand in 2022, they want to say, I'm fully engaged with that brand. I use it. I personally use it. And I'm behind it. And this is why there's a transparency also thing where they share very openly the commissions that they're getting from the brand. And I think the communities that really support the influencers not only want to purchase the product because they think it's a good product, but they also want to support the influencer who is behind that brand, which is very interesting. So yeah, I think that shift has happened quite fast, but I think the technology right now is a bit falling behind. If I'm honest, I think social media platforms are not really ready to change just yet. They're trying to catch up, but the infrastructure is just not there.
That's super exciting. I'm like shaking with excitement right now. This is super cool. I'm really enjoying this too, Bo. Thank you. So you mentioned the move towards authenticity as something that you felt was really cool about the evolution of influencer marketing. What else is happening and up and coming in this world that's really interesting to you, and you think that brand stakeholders should be paying attention to?
The obvious thing, there's so many things that are happening at the same time in the creator economy in a broader sense. And obviously, we're all looking at each other when it comes to NFTs and the metaverse, all of these topics that surround the creator economy in a broader sense. I think these are big things. I think everybody finds them interesting, but I think they're still not tangible, in my opinion, where I think everybody agrees that they are the next big thing. It has yet to materialize. And so in the meantime, for me, on a more operational and rational level, as somebody who's in the industry every day, what I'm looking for, what's up and coming is, I will come back to what I said earlier, how brands are now shifting away from one-time partnerships. And they have now decided, some of them at least, and I'm seeing more and more of them, to not work with influencers one time. It is now about, and not even get behind one piece of content or ask for one post or ask for one story or for one YouTube video or live stream that lasts 30 minutes exactly. I think a lot of brands are shifting from, I like this person embodies my brand. I will now sponsor that influencer for 6 months or a year, and I will pay them every month. And there is no content ask. I am supporting this content creator because they are somebody who should use or is using my brand. And that's, for me, key, because you're creating also a bond between the person, the content creator, and your brand that's long lasting, even more lasting than the time of the partnership that you will be creating. There's a sense of gratitude that you're also allowing the content creator to live of his passion, that you're allowing him to create more mature, more professional content with the money that you're giving to him. And there's a sense of gratitude that you are more likely to speak well about a product and brand without the pressure of a brief, if you are just a sponsor of their content overall, sponsored or not sponsored. You're allowing them to create the content that they initially started their channel for. And that's, for me, is what's, I know it's very basic, but to me, that's a more operational, interesting shift. Obviously, on channels like Twitch and YouTube, it has happened a few years ago in the US and in Europe. It's starting to happen. It's now coming to Asia. And it used to be only for macro influencers, for big celebrities of the internet. It is now coming to smaller people. People who have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube start having some sponsors. And I think that's really interesting.
That's really interesting. I mean, I think if I was to try to summarize that, it sounds like you get better performance when you really partner, right? Like you really try to partner with a creator as a brand owner, rather than looking at it as a transactional, I need to hit this KPI by this date, and I use you for that, and then it's done. But this is really about creating like a community of influencer evangelists almost, right? Like,
it's your ambassadors, is customers that basically, when they post, they will naturally be behind your brand. When they go out for a drink, when they have dinner with their friends, they will also be advocate of your brand. So I'm really engaged with brands who want to work with current customers. There are so many people out there who on social media, without any pay, without any collaborations, already speak about their favorite brands, regularly. I think brands, and some brands have the reflex to say, well, these people already speak about me. Why would I partner with them? They're doing it for free. But I think this is where they're mistaken. is because I think you could do so much more with these people. If they were, for example, if people who already love your brand were incentivized on sales, they basically become an extension of your sales team, which they would not do if you don't engage them with on a commercial, with a commercial angle. And I think this change has to happen more. Some brands have realized it. I think it has to happen on a bigger scale. I think influencers as who are already customers is a very big thing right now. It's very hot for me.
So coming from an EU background, because you're French, right, Thibault?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. Just to double confirm that. So coming from an EU background, but obviously spending quite a bit of time in the region, working with Lazada before. What are some of the biggest differences about Southeast Asia and US and EU influencer strategies? Like, how is Southeast Asia different than elsewhere in the world from your experience?
I also come from an ops background. I used to do this at Lazada. And obviously, Southeast Asia is a big region with many countries, with many islands. As far as e-commerce goes, I'd say shipping times are much longer still in 2022 in Southeast Asia than EU and the US. I mean, next day delivery is such a big thing for most of the assortment, a lot of the assortment online in the US, in Europe, which makes a massive impact on influencer campaigns. Why? Because the time to complete a campaign has a direct correlation with the time it takes to ship. Obviously, some brands in the US are able to fulfill complete campaigns in less than a week. In Southeast Asia, the time to complete a campaign is still of above 2 weeks, and so it means more preparation. It means that you need to be ahead of the game, especially when it comes to big e-commerce times of the year in Southeast Asia. I mean, Black Friday is around the corner, 11/11, 12/12, all of these big moments, decisive moments for brands and sellers in the region. Obviously, a lot of brands still in 2022 fail to plan ahead. It is not the case in the EU and the US, where I think it's ingrained that they have to do it. We still have some in Southeast Asia, people who do not recognize that the shipping times and how busy the influencers are in those moments will affect the time to live. Basically, what we say, the time to live, the time it takes for an influencer between the moment they agree on a fee and the time it takes for the post to hit the feed is on average, 2.5, 3 weeks. That's a massive difference to me. That's number one. And the number two is a bit more straightforward. I think, North America especially, and Europe second, they are more mature markets when it comes to influencer marketing. So I think a lot of brands, especially D2C brands, who were digital first, it's not uncommon to have some of these brands based in the US or in Europe allocate 30 to 50% of their marketing budgets in influencer marketing. It is no longer an anomaly in these regions. In Southeast Asia, it is a complete anomaly if you see a brand allocating 30 to 50% of their budget. I think there is a lag time. I think it will happen. It is just not there yet. And so a lot of brands are still spending a huge chunk on Facebook ads, for example. A lot of brands in Europe and the US have started to shift because it's becoming too costly to do that. There's just a lag time, but it's a major difference. I think in Southeast Asia, we still have to convince brands to shift budgets versus in Europe and in the US, North America, US and Canada, the brands naturally have come to the conclusion that they have to do it if they want to stay ahead of the game. These would be my two big differences, I think.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear about the impact of shipping delays and lead time. But I guess it totally makes sense because that is at the end of the day, the customer experience, right? So if that customer experience is suboptimal compared to what you see in US and EU, you're going to see different performance, right? So you probably need to modify your performance expectations as well, because it's basically like driving traffic to a landing page that's not so well optimized, right? Probably going to convert a little bit less than something that's fully optimized for text copy conversion, right? So really interesting. If you could give just one piece of advice to e-commerce startups or incumbent brand leaders in Southeast Asia when they're coming up with their 11/11 or 12/12 or maybe influencer strategy just for 2023 more broadly, what would you suggest they focus on?
If I had to pick one, I think the overall theme of this conversation we're having is it is around this search for authenticity. I would tell brands and sellers to trust that the people they have selected to carry out their brand identity, their brand message, their brand USPs, whatever you decide to advertise. I will ask brands and sellers to trust more on the creativity and the content that will come out of this collaboration. Don't try to control everything, because it will only result in sounding fake and sponsored, which will lead to poor results. I have, in my 4 years at Capssion, running campaigns, so many campaigns with e-commerce brands, D2C brands, I have seen some things that are not, that should not happen. I have seen brands who, for example, ask influencers to copy paste text into their captions on their post, which results in everybody having the same text. The brand really feels in control because they have written every single word that's in a post, but the influencer, the person behind the post, has lost completely their tone of voice, which is in a lot of cases what made them successful in the first place, because they have a way of making jokes, they have a way of interacting with their community that's very specific to them. They're individuals. And so when you remove their tone of voice, you lose the authenticity, you lose conversion, simply. I have seen brands who ask, for example, I've seen a beauty brand who has asked on Capssion for every influencer to shoot the product against white tiles in a bathroom. And they were working with 200 or 300 influencers on one campaign. The same as the tone of voice. If you ask every influencer to do the same content, first of all, you have to find a white tile bathroom, which is not easy everywhere. And so by doing this, you also prevent the influencer from being creative, which is usually why you should partner with them, is you want also them to create content that is unique, that will speak to their community. And who knows best about their community than the influencer? And so don't try to substitute what the influencer is good for. Give a canvas, give a clear picture of what you are expecting, but don't be too specific, because by being too specific, it will be counterproductive. That would be the number one piece of advice, is let influencers create, give them the tools to create good content, but don't substitute yourself to their job, basically.
Last question, I think, or second to last question, Thibault. What do you think Southeast Asian e-commerce or influencer marketing is going to look like in 5 years? Like, if you were to forecast the future, where do you think this thing's going? Is TikTok Shop going to take over the marketplace world?
So much can happen in 5 years. Maybe we'll all be with Mark Zuckerberg on the metaverse. I hope not. No, I think e-commerce and social media will merge. They will converge, because the second you discover products on social media, it feels unnatural to ask people to leave the social media platform to buy. And I'm found in so many instances now in 2022 where I like something. I have an intent of purchase. When I see something, I have a link either on the bio or on the post, and I don't want to, like, the second I'm taken off, it's kind of like, oh, maybe later. I don't know if it's TikTok. I don't know if it's a new platform, a new social media platform. I don't know if it's Instagram shops that will become the new D2C websites. It has not so far. But I think where you find products is where you should buy them. And so this is what I'm excited about. This is what I think the world will look like in 5 years. I think it makes so many things easier. I think anybody can make a living, can earn commissions from the products that they would sell through affiliate links, if that were to happen, which makes everybody's life easier. Most importantly, it makes the end customer, you and me, it makes our life easier. And so we're tired of being jumped around from one link to another. And so if an influencer, if a content creator convinces us to buy a product on social media, this is where the sale should happen, in my opinion. And so, yes, I think the two will start to be blurry. E-commerce marketplaces and social media platforms, I think it will get blurrier and blurrier on which is which, because again, it all starts with findability, where you find products and brands. And right now it's social media. So I think this is where it's headed.
This is so much fun. I think I could go another 45 minutes with you, Thibault. Got so many more questions. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to ask one more just for the smaller entrepreneurs, folks that are just getting started, creating brands. So, hypothetically, like let's say that you were to create a brand from scratch. You raise a couple $100,000. So not a big seed round from a large VC or something like that. You're almost bootstrapped. And let's say it's an outdoors brand. Generically speaking, you need to launch this brand. You need to get conversions. You have a D2C store and a marketplace store. How would you look at growing your brand via influencer from the ground up?
There's so many instances where we have these brands who are signing up to Capssion, creating accounts and launching campaigns to get started. My number one advice for, apart from the one I gave earlier about, authenticity, social media is at its, birth. It's a place where you speak with people, is where you exchange ideas and where you have conversations. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that. So many people now just, they are passive to social media. And I think as a brand, it's the same. As a brand, if you raise a couple of hundred of thousands of dollars, start speaking with people, not only during the campaign, after the campaign, because sometimes influencers, during a collaboration, because it's paid, they feel they have an obligation to say good things about your brand and not constructive criticism. I think DMs, chatting with influencers overall, they are people who have direct feedback from the thousands of people who follow them. Speak to them. Speak to influencers. Speak to the people who give comments on the posts. So often we see comments left unanswered by brands. No, these are potential customers. Every one of them should be addressed because you should be converting these people into buying your product. I would advise to nurture every relationship. See every influencer you engage with as an ambassador over the long run, somebody who should be an advocate for your brand. And A/B test. Don't have a set idea of what works and what doesn't. Explore. Nobody's an expert. You're allowed to fail. You're allowed to have collaborations with influencers that don't pan out, and some won't pan out. But be patient. Be patient because you're dealing with humans behind every post. There's an influencer, it's a human, and give them the time to convince their audience to buy the product. I'll finish with this. On average, on Capssion, it takes a brand on average, and this is a data that we pulled out from over 1,000 campaigns. That's over 10,000 collaborations in Southeast Asia. The sale on average happens after 3.5 brand mentions by one influencer, meaning above 3 collaborations to sell for the first time. What's really interesting when you think about it is you and me, like Matthew, when you are on social media and when you see a brand for the first time, it is so rare that you would go immediately like, oh, that's amazing, I'm going to buy it. It almost never happens like this. If you see it once, you're like, at best, you're intrigued. At best, you would go on their Instagram page and look what the brand is. If you see it for the second time with the same influencer, content creator that you follow, you might have at best an intent of purchase. And on the third time, you're like, well, if this person's using it so often, it might be good. And this is when you could be converted. And this is how I see it. It's a journey. Get away from one-offs. If you are in it for the short run, do not invest $1 in influencer marketing. It is not going to work. So yeah, that would be if you are a D2C brand and you're listening, patience and quality collaborations is what you should go for. Yeah, for sure.
Super cool. Thank you so much, Thibault. This has been really, really insightful. I know our audience is going to love this one. Very last question, I promise. And it's for your benefit. Where can listeners find you online?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So they can find me on capssion.com, capssion.com. This is where you can create an account as a brand to get started. Accounts are we're a free to use app, so you can get started for free. And then you can find us on all the social media channels. We're pretty much on every one of them. Instagram and TikTok being our two most important ones right now. And you can find me personally on LinkedIn, Thibault Couperie Eiffel, and on Instagram as well, under Thibault Eiffel. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. For the audience, we'll leave Thibault's information in the show notes so you can get in touch if you're interested in launching an influencer campaign in Southeast Asia. I can't highlight enough the sophistication of the Capssion team. And I think this conversation hopefully evidences that to you. These guys really know their stuff. And I always enjoy speaking with Thibault. So for that's the end of this episode. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for spending your time with us today and listening. I hope you learned something new that will help your business or your career. For new listeners, please find all the resources, links, and show notes at splitdragon.com/podcast. And if you want to continue the conversation and connect with other e-commerce leaders in Southeast Asia, join us in our Discord community. The link to the community is in our podcast page, splitdragon.com/podcast. This episode of e-commerce in Southeast Asia is sponsored by SplitDragon. SplitDragon offers technology and professional services to help brands, agencies, and sellers enter, launch, and grow their online sales channels in Southeast Asia. If you're just getting started, you can use SplitDragon tools like Shopee's sales database or Lazada sales database to understand current product sales volume. And if you're already selling, you can use tools like competitor intelligence and search rank tracking, financial management, and A/B testing to grow your business. Additionally, SplitDragon's professional services has helped large global brands like Unilever, Laneige, and HP, as well as small startups win in Southeast Asia marketplace e-commerce. From advisory and consulting to custom data analytics to running paid ads to launching new products, SplitDragon can help grow your online sales in Southeast Asia. If you want to use data to grow your e-commerce business without the guesswork, please visit our sponsor, splitdragon.com.